Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to the channel RPG with DBJ. Glad to have you here. Our layout is a little bit different today because I wanted to start this out by saying that for those of you who do not know, I am a writer for Critical Hit Publishing, and one of the brainchilds, one of my babies, is the cinematic environs, which completely embraces the third pillar of the tabletop RPG experience, which is exploration and using the environment, even so far as going to creating interesting and dynamic locations for players to have their adventures and such. So our layout is a little bit different here because to my side here, to my right, are two images here. Both of them are new releases from Critical Hit Publishing under the cinematic environs. The reason there are two releases happening so close together is because we are writing them in parallel. So the one that looks green, the one right here in the middle, is our newest release, Wetlands, and it is the 9th release in our natural environment series, and it is everything about swamps and bogs and shoals and mires and estuaries. Yes, there's a difference between all of them, of fens and bogs and all that other kind of good stuff. Parasites and diseases for Dungeons and Dragons, most notably 5th edition, although quite easy to adapt to them. And there's 96 pages in all, full color and everything. Now below that, it does say cinematic environs, and you may not be able to tell this, this book is known as Survival. Now we do have one for 5th edition. This one is for Call of Cthulhu. So we've taken the books and then rewritten them and reflavored them, new layout, new information, but based on the same concept of using the third pillar of exploration. But this is for Call of Cthulhu, and this book is listed. Both of them are in Drive-Thru RPG. You can easily find. Just type in Critical Hit Publishing, or type in my name, Dave and Jackson. Don't bother doing that. Just type in Critical Hit Publishing. You'll find it there. And if you are a Call of Cthulhu fan, you can see the parallel books that have, I believe this one's like 62 pages of survival, and use that for like your horror games and such. And that's listed under the Miskatonic University. So now that we've gotten that out the way, sorry, I had to do a little preamble because we do have multiple books going on, and gotta get the word out for that. Hey guys, what's going on there? Cam, everybody's there. Dead Man Tesla, Rickard. Yes, thank you very much for that. And I've seen. I don't normally. I'm not a numbers guy, so like I don't really watch the numbers. There's all kinds of ways to do measurements, but people have already jumped in and purchased the Wetlands book now already now that it's been released. So I'm really happy about that. The physical books won't be ready for, I'm going to say, 2 to 3 weeks. That's yeah. Like Rickard says, survival in Lovecraft, you're done. Yeah, and technically it is. That's what we've done, right? Like, now Alex does the majority of that. He kind of runs it past me, but yeah, he does the Miskatonic University version, the Call of Cthulhu versions of the books, and he's had a lot of fun with it. We've done an Arctic one called The Pipeline. That's an adventure in the 1980s, looking for an Exxon oil spill. There's the desert one, takes place in the 1970s, called Highway of Blood, and driving through the lonely roads of like Arizona or New Mexico in the States in a dusty but V8 engined muscle car, listening to 70s music and hippie culture and stuff. Yeah. Oh, survival in Lovecraft. You don't. Yeah. You don't survive. It's not whether you win or lose. It's if you can just run faster than the guy behind you. All right. Sorry. I had to reveal that stuff. It's uh, pretty excited about it. 96 pages on wetlands. It's pretty incredible. Yeah. Like I said, go to YouTube and type in eye worms or bot flies, and you'll have plenty of fun. Or, give up your lunch or something. All right, so today, got that out the way. Today is Crunch Time Tuesday. I love that title. Got to give credit where credit's due, and because I didn't come up with that. Today we are talking about crunch mechanics. That's why there's a spinning gears next to my head. But since we do tend to talk about something all week long, we're talking about unreliable narrators and point of view and info dumping, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's coming there, Rickard. Yeah, he says still want them in a deluxe leather bound hardcover. Oh, the compendium is coming. At least 2 more books: Rainforest and Subterranean. Subterranean is going to come before Rainforest because wetlands and rainforest back to back just it's kind of weird. They'll blend in with each other, but yeah, those are the next 2, and I think that's after that will be the compendium, and we'll do things like subclasses, new spells, more monsters, probably a couple more random charts for each one, and then put them all together. It's going to have new material. It's not just going to be all the books back to back to back, because there's a lot of reprinted material in it, especially like the first 3 pages. Anyway, I needed to point this out because I didn't do it yesterday, and I really apologize. All right, so the main crux of what we were talking about are unreliable narrators, but I did want to make a point because have Rickard and I going back and forth with this a little bit. There is a difference, or rather, there's a nuance between a point of view character and an unreliable narrator, right? So a point of view character, especially if you're reading or you want to write RPG content, doesn't need to be unreliable, right? Like, let's say, for example, you've got the 5 Kings Mountain with the Dwarven Empire, and you want to describe the Dwarven Empire and the culture and their magic and their history and such. And that could very well be written from the point of view of one or more Dwarven residents who are talking about their history and their culture and their language and the weapons and their enemies. None of that has to be unreliable, right? None of that has to be couched from their point of view in a method that you might find the information incorrect at some point. Okay. But you could literally write it from their point of view, speaking in their language, they're writing it as if this dwarven person is talking to you across a table, or having written this down in a memoir, or speaking to a crowd of people or something of that nature. Okay. The unreliable narrator portion of it, you can turn the volume up or down based on how much space you want open in your RPG content. An example would be let's go with the 5 Kings Mountain, and let's say one of the kings has died, and in one of the mountains it's crime ridden, and it's all about dwarven culture, but it's like dark and decadent, and there's like monsters from deep down in the subterranean realms that are now living in and around this mountain, and the dwarves have kind of lost their way. Your point of view character may, kind of be pissed off that this is happening, and no good dwarf would dare accept this kind of thing, and might have a particular opinion about it. Their opinion may color the player's interaction, or allow space to be available for a number of game masters to say, well, maybe it isn't crime ridden or as dangerous or as lacking in moral fortitude as this dwarven individual is describing it, right? It might leave it open because the dwarven individual might say, well, I haven't been there in 87 years and I would never step foot in there. But what I've heard is, I've heard from a friend who heard from a friend who heard it from a friend who, you know, it, I mean, it might have been something like that, who heard it from a friend who went to that one of the five mountains. And so the information presented might be unreliable from the narrators to allow there to be space where when the players get there, sure, it might be a den for crime, but maybe it also might be a place for rebellion or a way to go, oh, the dwarven tradition has held us back all this time, and this is the only place where we can, truly be free and be ourselves and that kind of thing. So, when because this Crunch Time Tuesday, sorry, I apologize. This Crunch Time Tuesday, we're not necessarily talking about in game mechanics. We're going to be a little bit meta today, I think. Another thing to talk about when it comes to creating RPG content is um, uh, relating to unreliable narration. I would have to say that there might be something. This is a kind of a stretch of a meta, but um, unreliable mechanics in your game, right? And what I mean by that is yeah. Oh, see, I think the legally blind lurker has is kind of hinting upon something I'm about to mention. Says started running Tiny Dungeons this weekend. Minimalist RPG. By the way, I have two of their books. I have the I don't. No, I've got three of them. Tiny Dungeon, um, Mechas versus Monsters, and there's is it Star Space Frontier? I don't. It's not called Star Frontiers, but it's like Space and the Frontier or something like that. Anyway, started running a Tiny Dungeons this weekend. Minimalist RPG, great system for on the fly or a quick one shot. Also great to run without a bunch of notes. With my visual issues, I'm running it in my head. Oh, hells yes! And by the way, I keep forgetting that you have visual issues, but I could care less about that. In the sense that that you're always welcome. Not that I don't care. But yeah, it's just a 2d6 system, and that's it. It's basically a die six system. You roll 2d6, and I think you need to get a 5 or a 6 for success, and then you subtract a die for disadvantage. You add a die for advantage, and that's basically it. Well, let's take that back. That's basically it, unless you have certain character modifications to it. It's pretty, yeah. Is it Tiny Frontiers, the space one? Yep, Tiny Frontiers. I've got 3 of their books, and they've got a mecha version of their game as well. Mechas versus Monsters. The whole giant robots, kaiju, all that kind of business. Sorry about that, Cam. Cam's like, DBJ, what is the name of that song? I have it stuck in my head now. I can't remember the name of the song. Dude, I can't remember it either. But you know what? I heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who, and still don't know the name because they didn't tell me. I know I'm going to get dinged on that. I know I am. Sorry about that, guys. They're pretty on it when YouTube's pretty on it when it comes to things like that. Maybe even Twitch might even ding me on it as well. Rickard says, my cousin 5 times removed knows a guy whose aunt Horsemaster once ran into a wanderer who saw a strange shape going into the ruins, right? Yeah. It's like, I heard it from a person who heard it from a then. It really, dead man? It's like, it's called heard it from a friend. See how I'm pronouncing, like, it's not friend, but friend. No, I'm just. Oh my goodness, this show's just going to go downhill. Oh man. I love that song anyway. By the way, take it on a Cameron's like, I found it. Take it on the run by REO Speedwagon. All credit due to them. I happen to just do a little parody of said songage, so I apologize for that, REO. Man, I remember playing Cyberpunk 2020 REO Meatwagon. Just I don't know why I pulled that out of my rear end, but yeah, the REO Meatwagon. It was a dock wagon service when you get your innards blasted out of you by 50 cals on the streets of Night City. Yeah. Like Tesla puts down, my brother's sister's cousin never said anything about bars. Malik from Conan the Destroyer. Man, Conan the Destroyer, what a classic Dungeons and Dragons group that was. Adventuring group. Conan, they had a wizard, a barbarian fighter, they had a ranged sniper. Did they use was it a bow and arrow? I think it was a sling. They had a thief. Ricker's like, going downhill, is that a skill challenge? Yeah, made with disadvantage. Yep. Tesla goes, but Akira the wizard, the bars were put up after your sister's brother's cousins escaped. Malik says, cousin, sister's brother? How many times do I have to tell you that? Cousin, sister's brother, not the brother, sister's cousins. Oh man. So of course, here we are, you know, getting squirrely about information and an unreliable information and things like that. And for the good side of our role playing games, there is something fun to be said about things that you're not quite sure if it's true yet or not until you encounter it, or that everyone believes there's information out there and they have little bits and pieces, and it requires the players to gather that information together. So you guys are funny. Let's see. Lurker says, due to drive through our I'm going to drive through RPD, you got dungeons, supers, player's guide, and mechs and monsters for under $25 for PDFs. Oh, for the tiny dungeon. Yeah, they do have a supers one too. So yeah, went to drive through RPG, got tiny dungeon. I guess it might be called Tiny Supers, player's guide, and the mechas and monsters for under $25 for the PDFs. Yeah, I've got the physical books because I'm old. I like my Dead Tree versions. Her cousin's sister's brother. That's just her cousin. I didn't even think about that. That's like telling somebody, so do you mean the day after yesterday or the day before tomorrow? Which is just today. Anyway, sometimes there's a matter of, like, especially if you're running, like I mentioned with Call of Cthulhu, if you're running like an investigation style game, it could be the players needing to gather disparate pieces of information because everyone's got their own particular agenda or opinion about things like NPCs in your world, and the players are just needing to gather together enough information to uncover what it is, to get the truth out of things, because everyone's coloring their interactions with whatever the information is based on the truth that exists for them. You know, one group is like, oh, there's like the scaled folk. They're like half man, half alligators that live around the old ruins. No one ever goes over there. And then they go out into the swamp, and the swamp people there are like, oh, you mean the lizard folk? Yeah, they've been residing in that temple, but they didn't build the temple. They just happen to live there. We deal with them all the time. And then the PCs encounter the lizard folk, and the lizard folk are like, you know, there's an evil in these here swamps and things like that, and we've taken residence in the old temple because it's the last refuge of our people. You know, a disease has been, you know, ravaging us, and it's like, oh, okay, so now, yeah, people had different opinions. They, you know, you find out that there are like these alligator folk out there, and then someone's like, well, no, they're lizard folk, but you got to beware. And then they meet the lizard folk, and they're like, no, we're not scary, but there is something out there that's pretty dangerous. By, you know, gaining as much information as possible, everyone coloring it to themselves. I think Legally Blind's like, your mother's cousin's brother was my aunt's college roommate. What does that make us? Well, absolutely nothing. Gotta love Spaceballs. I was trying to remember where I heard something like that, and I was like, no, wait, what? I couldn't. Oh man. Uh, You guys are crazy. So, when it comes to unreliable mechanics in games and fuzzy mechanics, some people like if you fall on the side of game systems that are, um, I guess you could call them complex, that are rules intensive, they tend to have less, fuzzy rules. Whereas something like Tiny Dungeon, a lot of micro games do this. Heck, there's even competitions out there for one page role playing games, and a number of them have been award winning. Like Lasers and Feelings is a perfect example, and it goes on and on. And I would even say Fate falls into this category with fuzzy mechanics, where there's a mechanical pass fail system, but the end result of the pass and or fail might include some kind of like complication or obstacle or um, uh, side effects of either passing or failing, but not completely passing or failing the challenge. And there might be some fuzziness in there and unreliableness to a mechanical structure. A lot of uh, the Apocalypse Engine games run on this system where you roll 2d6, and if you roll like a 7 through 9, you succeed with a complication, and that complication is a one-off, right? There's no necessarily mechanics, but the complication could be, oh, you snuck into the corporate headquarters, or you snuck into the castle swimming across the moat and climbing the walls, but now there are guards running about because they know someone snuck in. They just don't know where you are, right? Um, like, yeah, like Rickard says, like, how about failing a check in fifth edition, especially with a nat one, right? Yeah, if you fail, what does the failure look like? Now, for the most part, we understand that, right? Like in combat, we know what passing and failing in combat means. I swing my sword. Okay, you missed the target. Oh, you strike the target because you rolled a success. But there, even with that, there is a fuzziness to it, because if someone's in full plate mail with a shield and you roll and your attack failed, it doesn't necessarily mean you missed. It just means did maybe your sword binged off of the shield or impacted the armor and didn't have an effect. Your battle axe hits the dragon turtle's shell, but you know didn't was just reflected off of it or something, right? It might not have been that you missed. It might be that you failed in the attempt to do what it was that you were trying to do. And oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. Rickard says the problem is the players know they rolled a nat one. That is a weirdism when it comes to skill checks. Maybe not combat, but with skill checks, that is a weirdism that we might talk about as well. I can't agree with you more there, Lurker. Lurker says a great one-page content winner is Lady Blackbird. Yeah, Lady Blackbird is excellent because it's basically a one pager, or well, with the artwork it's multiple pages. But Lady Blackbird is a one page contest winner where basically you are on a airship, the lady the Lady Blackbird, and you play a number of characters with pirates and things, and you try to unlock the keys and stuff. So it's cool. Hey, yeah, right. Red Dice Diary says more than all love Lady Blackbird. Yeah, and so sometimes like the micro games either are extremely bounded or they have like a fuzzy mechanical aspect to them that can drive some players batty. You get them, damn near upset because the pass fail system has an unreliable outcome to it that they may not be used to, that other individuals might embrace. Yeah, Rickard says, though, going with the unreliable narrator, what if you tell them tell them the truth on a nat 1. So a nat 20 and a nat 1 is the same info, but the context for the player is different. Yeah, like, okay, so let's expound upon that, because like Rickard is saying, character wants to investigate or is interrogating someone. Let's say it's not a true interrogation, like torturing someone, but they are in a tavern and they're trying to gain information about the city. And as the game master, you intended to give them some information, but they rolled a nat 1 and then they either roll a nat 1 or a nat 20. So you could give them the information, and this is where the fuzziness of success or failure comes in, right? So you could give them the information, but the context of the information might be completely wrong. So an example would be, you could give them the information on a nat 1, but it could be colored with, or they might get more information where they get 5 pieces of information, one of them completely true. The other 4 pieces of information might be completely false. So they got what they wanted, but now the player is like, okay, what am I going to do with 5 pieces of terrible information and having to pick which one of them is supposed to be correct? Or like Rickard says, well, the context is that they failed to check, right? So they could get the proper information and then either not believe it. You know, if you get a good role player, when the person they're talking to is like, oh, yeah, every weekend the nobles go out for a fox hunt, and of course everybody knows that they go out for a fox hunt, and the player's like, there's no way they leave their their enemies are after them everywhere and they go out for a fox hunt. There's no way. Whereas on a nat 20, they still get that information. Hey, they go out for a fox hunt every weekend, and they take an entourage with them, but they do leave their, the safety of their keep. And they're like, oh, really? Oh, we can time something, right? Yeah. You're so, okay, Lurker. Red Dice says, any game where I can play a shape-shifting goblin sky sailor, I'm all about that life. Talking about Lady Blackbird. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Rickard is, oh, wait. Pass me by. Okay. Rickard says, if you roll a nat 1 and the DM gives you the info, you assume that whatever the DM gives you is false. You know what? Not even just that, right? Like, let's say you do a stealth check. You're sneaking into the castle, okay? And you roll your stealth and you roll a nat 1 on a nat 1, maybe you knocked over a vase and it fell down and it made noise, right? But there's also a possibility you might have snuck in and you are convinced that you're completely silent, but your adversaries who noticed you sneaking in don't alert you that they know you're sneaking in, and then they try to surround you with guards by pretending like they don't hear you, right? Like that is a possibility as well, whereas hey, I'm going to try to pick that lock, okay, well, you rolled a nat 1. Do you know that you failed? Like, did you break a lock pick off in the lock, or do you think you unlocked the lock and set off the trap, right? And you just didn't know it. Sometimes, there is a benefit for the game master to make die rolls behind something. And actually, it would be kind of cool to have like, you ever get those, I know you guys have seen them before, both for gambling, but I remember using them for like Yahtzee or backgammon, where you have the little cup, the little fake leather cup with the felt inside of it. So you could roll the dice in the cup, turn it over, don't reveal it, describe what your actions are, right, as if you succeeded, and then reveal the dice to see if what the dice mechanic has revealed, even though the player is convinced of the fact, right? That's a possibility to do something like that if you're face to face, instead of like the game master rolling the dice for you, because I know some players can't stand that, which used to be a thing, rolling behind roll behind a DM screen. Red Dice Diary says, I agree that if you roll a nat 1, it's difficult to be as authentic about your character actions, even for a good RPer. Yeah, it's I I can see an argument for nat 1, nat 20. Like a nat 1 might literally be tripping over your own shoelace, right? And stumbling into something if you're like trying to sneak around. Like maybe I could make the argument that on like a nat 20, like a sniper in a nat 20, you make a perfect shot and that you're not ducking back behind the stone ridge going, I don't know if I hit that person in the throat, when of course, when you clearly did, when your arrow goes to the throat of the orc chieftain or something, right? But on the other hand, most of the problems we have in real life is that we think we succeeded or failed, but that doesn't necessarily match up with our success or failure in doing a thing, right? If you apply for a job and you go for a face-to-face interview, well, Blind Lurker's like, I like the cup idea. Like, I've used that before, although I did it on the DM side where I was like, the bad guys, surround you with their weapons and blah, 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 blah. And I rolled the dice and covered them up and was like, and the players are like, well, it was basically, do you give up or do you fight on? Because if you fight on, they could have got a crit and they get the crit on you if I reveal the dice, right? And it was basically a way to add role playing into the middle of combat. So it was like, roll dice, cover them up. All right, now we're going to have a little bit of a talk with come out from cover and blah, 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 like in a movie where people are fighting. They're also like yelling and screaming at each other, and then you reveal the dice as to, player characters are surrounded by the enemies. Do they get a chance to fight their way out of it, or do they get captured? And so I've used that on the game master side. I've never done it on the player side, but I think there's a good way to do it, though. Like Rickard says, as an alternative, ask the players to roll a die without context, just a straight D20, no mention of what skill they're rolling. Now, I've done that plenty of times before, whether you could very easily do that for a perception, notice, insight type of check, or you could very easily do that for a persuasion, deception style check. Like when a person goes in for a job interview and they have a face-to-face and they leave, most of us are like, I have no idea how that interview went, right? But behind closed doors, that person might be, looking at you like, yeah, your resume's okay. We'll get back with you. And then when the doors close, they're like, yes, we found the perfect person, right? But you didn't know that because they didn't reveal it to you. They kept their face, they put on their game face, right? On the other hand, they might be like, I'm not hiring this person. Crumble, 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 file 13 right into the trash can. So you never know, even though your impression might be, I think I got that job because they were so pleasant to me. And the pleasant person's like, oh, if I have to interview one of these no good, Like Rickard says, let me tell you, the players don't like it. I mean, they do, but in the sense that it cranks up the tension. Yeah. Yeah. I it's I don't know how. This is one of these things I was going to talk. I don't do top fives. I don't do top five listings at all. But this brings to mind like one of these like top 5 things in role playing games that we have yet to successfully and reasonably confront as a standard, because it still exists as something that I don't want to say it's a problem, but the context of the problem still exists, and we haven't come to a consensus on it, right? What I mean by it is there are things in role playing games that you would think by now we would solve the problem. Like, for example, the idea of running a game session where some people haven't are unable to show up to. But you're in the middle of your players have traveled across the vast ocean, gotten to the Isle of Dread. They've gotten to X1, right? And you pulled the dust, you've blown the dust off of it. You're like, hey, we're going to do Isle of Dread. You've got 5 players in your group, and now 2 of them can't show, right? You would have thought we would have already had a standardized method of dealing with this particular situation, and we don't. Like a lot of indie games do this. I'm sorry, I'm reading Lurker's comment too. A lot of indie games do this where they describe what the fuzzy mechanic is, right? Like, oh, if you roll a number between 7 and 9, you succeed, but you have to come up with a complication. Or if you roll a, 4, 5, or 6, you fail. But if you roll like a 2, 3, or 4, you fail with an additional complication to the thing. What's the Fantasy Flight games? They have a mechanism that way where it's not just a straight up die roll that you have numbers, but they've moved past the numbers to say, okay, when you roll this, you failed, but you gain some kind of advantage later on. It's the failing forward mechanism that some games have that's a little bit fuzzy and can turn some players sideways thinking about it. Like, well, how do I fail forward in my stealth attempt? Like, do I get captured, but the bad guys take me to the locked safe that I was trying to get to in the first place? Like, is that failing forward? It's that kind of thing. Rickard says, especially if you do that other points of the game, especially if you do that in other points of the game, instead of them rolling a die when they are going to try to stealth into the castle, you just ask the stealth player for a die roll when they start discussing the plan. You know what? I've played in a game where there was a dungeon master that asked for like give me a dozen rolls. Just roll a dozen times and just wrote them all down. Roll. Roll to 8, roll to 13, roll to 2, roll to 6, roll to 25. Roll, like roll the dice, right? Wrote them all down, and then we just started role playing. And of course, your mind is trying to remember what die rolls you had, but we just roll, made a big list of numbers. And then whenever you took an action, he would consult the numbers and start crossing them off based on whether the action you're taking required a die roll or not. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. Red Dice says, on a completely unconnected note, just ordered myself a hard copy of Cinematic Environment's Arctic Lands. Oh, really, dude? For my upcoming OSE game. No, I got a review PDF on way back. That sweet hard copy. Yeah, well, listen, our latest book, I need to point the correct direction. Whatever. Anyway, yeah, the it's this direction. Boom, boom, boom. This wetlands book here, as I'm scraping the side of it, is 96 pages, so it's grown quite a bit from the old hard copies. Yeah, it's yeah, it's throwing me off because normally they're lifted to one side of me, and now I got a different layout. But yeah, dude, yeah, we've Wetlands just released and Survival for Call of Cthulhu just released. So yeah, we're still working on it. The 9th book, dude. Anyway, I do like the idea of give me a roll first when they start talking about the plan, and then once they formalize the plan, you use that die roll for them, because at a certain point, the player might kind of forget what they were rolling for, which I think is kind of a surprise to even myself. Like, if you ask me to make a die roll and I go, all right, well, I rolled a 12, okay. And, and then we keep on role playing, and then I'm like, they're talking and all that kind of business, and then forgot that I did it. Yeah, I'm into that. Now I'm the kind of role I don't care if my character succeeds or fail. I just like the story part of it, so it doesn't bother me if I make a die roll and I fail because I'll role play the failure of it. But there are a lot of players who will try to circumvent the failed diplomacy check by claiming they didn't roll it in the first place. You know what I mean? We've seen that kind of thing. Yeah. Cameron's like kind of off top. Who's Gothnog? Gothnog is Alex Gillette, and he is the writer and layout artist for Critical Hit Publishing. Before I joined them, so Gothnog, I'm DBJ. He's Gothnog, and Rob is the Swamper because he lives near a swamp. It's just a pseudonym. It's a like a pen name of sorts. Yes, Captain Gothnog is actually. It was I think it comes from an NPC that was used over and over again in his early games or something. But anyway, Legally Blind Lurker says, I've seen GMs who ask players to roll 10d20s, and when they're doing perception rolls, etc., they cross numbers off as used. Players have still done their own rolls. Yeah, I honestly don't mind doing that. I know that kind of throws you off a little bit, like pre-rolling, but again, that's not an industry standard, and it's a thing where you're like, I wonder why people don't do it that way. Even though it's very simple to do it. 5 minutes before the game starts, hey guys, everybody bring out your dice. All right, get a 3x5 card, start rolling it. That kind of thing. Ricker says, just make sure you vary up when you ask for rolls to keep them on their toes. You know what? I do that a lot too, dude. Yeah, I do that a lot. You're fine, Cam. Uh, I'll ask for rolls even though they don't mean anything to instill a sense of tension in the players, even though they don't know what the die roll's for, because it really doesn't mean anything, right? Like I'll do the whole like you go into the creepy room, give me a die roll. What is it for? Don't worry about it. What's your perception again? Okay, all right. Anyway, so and then I'll keep on describing it, even though it has nothing to do with, I'm going to give them the information anyway, or I'm just letting them know something. Yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah. You and me on the same page on that one. Yeah, and the other thing for asking for die rolls, unnecessary die rolls, and I know this is kind of a behind the scenes thing for you players out there. So close your ears, la la la. Put your finger. The other reason for asking for some of those die rolls is it gives you a moment to think about what you're going to do next when your players make a left turn and you're not expecting it. So instead of stepping away from the table and going, oh man, you guys, I don't know what I'm going to do. Instead, sometimes you just need a heartbeat or two to reconceptualize what's going on and go, okay, wait a minute, they did this thing. Okay, they decided not to go in a haunted house, but they're going out into the woods. I don't have anything for the woods. Hey guys, give me a die roll. What's your survival skill again? All right. So you go out into the woods and you hear like creaking or something, that kind of thing. Now, Cameron says pre-rolling is something that seems like it would help a lot. Are there any problems players tend to have with it? I think the problems with pre-rolling is all psychological. A lot of the stuff that we talk about with problems in games when it comes to using the crunch and figuring out things, it's all psychological. There's something I'll dare say, it's like intrinsic in, I immediately roll the dice, right? I'm like, let's get a die roll. And I roll the dice and I go, I now know what's about to happen. It's like gambling. Okay. There's something, if you think about casinos are designed to elicit that endorphin hit or dopamine hit when you pull the lever on the thing, or you turn the whatever, you know what I'm talking about. Casinos. I'm mixing too many casino things. When a card flips over, when the dice are rolled, when the roulette table moves around, when the blackjack is revealed, there's a dopamine hit immediately. And if you roll ahead of time, you're separating it from the immediacy of the roll to more of an improv, right? Where the improv is, oh, well, if I take a look at my die rolls ahead of time, here's a success, success, failure, success, fail, fail, success, fail, success, success, fail, 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 success, right? And you're looking at this list start to go down, and you're improving the details of your successes and failures because they're already listed in front of you. That's a roundabout way of saying players don't like it because it, when they see a number two and they roll a d20 and that's for a perception check and they know their bonuses aren't going to reveal the orc bandits that are going to surprise them, it feels kind of like I could have rolled for that, right? like Legally Blonde says, no, we're going left, not right. 10-minute bathroom break. When you ask the players, like, oh, what are you gonna do? We're gonna go left, not right. And you're like, let me run to the head. I'll be right back. But no, Cam, I really do. I don't have a problem with pre-rolling. There are people who just will not. The idea of doing that is just would set them off. Hell, you could get 5 players. They could all pre-roll, and then each person moves their die rolls to their left, so they're pre-rolling for the other person. That really would get under people's skin, but I don't have a problem with it. I But honestly, like for example, early on in Dungeons and Dragons, there were game masters that rolled for every person's die roll. They rolled every roll. That's completely flipped over to game masters not rolling any dice, like Numenera, the cipher system, where they don't roll any dice. You roll everything. So, like Cameron says, they put the noisy machines up front so you get a rush, then put the quiet games in the back for Mystique. Everything in the middle is a party. I wonder, I wonder if role playing games are kind of similar to that, right? Like, okay, there's a meta that I think you just revealed, and it's tickling the back of my mind, and I'm not going to be able to get rid of it. Shit. uh, it'll come to me. It'll come to me. But there's a meta in what you're describing when it comes to like casinos and role playing games, and yeah, RPGs, the thinking man's casino. Yeah, exactly. Playing the odds, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, hell yes. Um, you know, I could see like the sexy part of games, right? The artwork, the setting, um, the player part of it, like the what the players get could be like the noisy machine part of it. Like, oh, this makes me look like a badass if I pick these things. Hey, my character is going to be this person in this game, and then the quiet stuff at the back might be like the dungeon master stuff, where it's like, it's the social part. It's not the crunch, but it's the details of the fluff. And then all the stuff in the middle is just the party. It's the game, and you come to the table. I don't know if that's a good descriptor, but I there's something in there that I'm not feeling yet. But I love it. I love it nonetheless. Thanks, Cam. Um, yeah, like Legally Blind Lurker says, Lady Blackbird, no GM rolling. Also, yeah. Cipher, Lady Blackbird. I have a game called Dream Chaser, which actually doesn't even have Dream Chaser doesn't even have modifiers for rolls. You just basically roll against yourself. Black Hack, the Black Hack OSR Black Hack does that as well. Yep. Yep. The game master doesn't roll, and I think the reason for that one is the game master's got enough on their plate to think about the game without having to also think about the die rolls, right? So it actually you could really do this for fifth edition if you wanted to. Fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons, just take 10 on every die roll you make. As a matter of fact, they even give you the averages for damage dice, right? You don't have to. The game master, as the dungeon master, you don't have to roll any dice. What you could do is take 10 for every die roll on your side of the table and ask the players to roll a resistance against that, right? So instead of you rolling against their armor class, what you do is you just assume that all of your enemies roll a 10, and then the players, instead of having a static armor class, which armor class is basically taking 10, because our armor class is 10 plus modifier, instead you just have the modifier and have them roll a die 20. So goblins have a +3 modifier. You just say they have a 13 difficulty, and then the players, to resist being hit by the goblins, take their plus, instead of a 14 AC, they just roll a d20 +4, and if they meet or exceed the 13 from the goblins, they resist the goblins' attack. If they roll below that 13, they are injured by the goblins, right? There's a way to do it. I maybe that was a complicated way of saying it, but fifth edition has tried to make things simple. I'm surprised they don't have a diceless version of it. Not diceless, GM, a non-GM rolling part of it. But they do, but in a way, they're hinting towards it because they have average damage and static AC, which reduces the die rolling part of it. Yeah, and like Rickard says, I kind of want to try to run a game where I as a DM roll all the dice. The players just describe all their actions, even in combat. And now, I mind you, God, it's been 40 years probably, or maybe a little less than that. But it's been a long time since I've ever played in a game where the DM rolled all the dice. But I can feel right now the heat coming from players that are like, hell no, I'm not letting the DM roll all the dice. But let me just describe this to you, okay? If the DM rolls all the dice and the players just describe all the actions, even in combat, what ends up happening is your mind you're always on your heels, which is a good thing because your mind is always wondering, like, I feel like I succeeded in something, but something tells me I didn't succeed. And the question of how successful or not you are in your mechanisms. Hey, I try to convince the guard to let me into the city. Okay, you didn't roll the dice. The dungeon master takes the dice and it's like, oh, okay, well, all right. The guard lets you in, and you're like, okay, did the guard let me in because he let me in because I convinced him? Or did the guard let me in and is going to double cross me or set me up or send spies after me? Or did somebody in the crowd overhear my evil plans? It's that kind of stuff. And I enjoyed it. I haven't played it in probably 35 years that way. That is to say, I think that's actually kind of a good thing. I like it. I wonder if you could do, right? Like Rickard is saying, like it forces players to role play in combat as well. Yep, yep. And even man, I love index card. Anyway, Lurker says, what you describe is close to index card RPG. Yeah, the IC RPG, the index card RPG, is very much like that. All the numbers are up above, they're on the table, and you just describe what the hell's going on, and you're not sure whether a thing worked or not. I like that. I like that a lot. I wonder if you could do a online die roller that rolls the dice but doesn't reveal the number until you click a thing, right? Like, oh, I attack the goblins with my spell, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like describing what you're doing with your battle axe. But you've made the die roll online and everyone can see it, but it's just a gray block. until you click it, and then it shows you what the number is, right? So now you commit to your action, you describe your action, reveal what it is, and then you're like, oh no, I got caught in the web, or I tripped and fell, or they surrounded me, I wasn't expecting that kind of thing, right? Cameron says, I think that maybe it's a good way to look at adventure design. Make your inciting incident a rush, give the final goal mystique, and make everything in the middle feel like the freedom of a house party. Ooh. Maybe roll for the players for social skills. Everything else but stealth is pretty obvious. Well, see, here's the. I'm going to slightly disagree with you, Cam, because I think there are times where we are convinced of our success, but we've done a face plant fail, or we've thought we've completely failed and we are completely successful in that action, right? Like, there are comedians. I'll take, for example, like a comedian gets up on stage, they tell jokes, no one's laughing. There's no like, and they're just like, damn, it's completely silent. Comedian leaves the stage and everyone's like, dude, that dude was awesome. And they like, it's like a viral video, right? Someone puts out a video, thinks nothing of it. They think it's a fail. That video becomes the biggest thing ever, right? And so I do think there is this, I think you lose the mystery of the success and fail if every die roll is up front and you get to see what it is. I'm not suggesting that we should just completely do away with all of us rolling our own dice. I'm just saying that you could elicit a reaction where I try to convince the guard to let me into the castle. The guard says yes, but although I've succeeded in getting in the castle, I'm not sure how much of a success that really is, right? And so, yeah, I don't know, man, dude. Yeah. Lurker says, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. Exactly, right? If you convince the guard and the guard says yes, are they like watching you? Sometimes one of the best things to do if you find a spy or a turncoat or a cutthroat in your group is to not alert that person. So the person who's sneaking into the castle, maybe they're just like, like, shh, don't let them know. Just go about your business, right? Just act normal as they call like another 30 guards to surround you to go, ha ha, we knew you were trying to kill the king or steal the crown jewels or something, and you tripped an alarm but you didn't notice it, right? So it's a weird thing, but yeah. Cameron says, ooh, and knowledge, roll for knowledges. They shouldn't know if they're right or not. That's where we get the problem with players like dogpiling or piling a rabbit kind of thing, where hey, the whole group goes into the library to look for the one book that will reveal an ancient text that will reveal the limitations on the evil lich that's dominated the empire, right? And what happens? The wizard goes, oh, all right, well, I'm going to make a roll to see if I find the book. Arcana check. Ooh, nat 1, right? What happens? 5 other players. Barbarian goes, my intelligence is 7. I got a 28. It's like, wait a minute. You wouldn't. Wait, first of all, how did you know the wizard failed? Second of all, how does the wizard know they failed? Maybe the wizard goes, dude, I checked all over the library. They don't have a book here on the subject matter. And I know because I've got an 18 intelligence. I'm a genius. I checked. They don't have it, right? Or is it circumstances? Maybe they roll a nat 1. Guess what? The book was stolen a long time ago. Maybe the book never was there in the first place. Therefore, the knowledge was never there. Or the player rolls, is convinced that the knowledge isn't there, and is like, don't even bother looking for it. You're not going to find it. And then, but then the other players are like, why would they automatically assume, no, dude, it's here. You're just not looking in the right place, as opposed to going like, yeah, I trust you. You're the wizard. You've been casting fireballs. You're literally shaping the weave of magic, and all I do is hit things about the head and shoulders with an axe. You know better than I do. And a good role player will just accept that fact, or the rogue that fails a stealth check, and then the ranger's like, well, I'll sneak instead. It's like, why would you do that? There's no reason for you to do that. It's because the dice are up front. But if the dice are hidden, the die rolls are hidden. And could you imagine? Because imagine this role playing event, right? Players go into library. Wizard goes, hey, I'm going to make a check, Arcana check. I've got into 18 intelligence. I got all these great bonuses. Another player is like, oh, I'm the cleric. I've got Arcana. Can I help him search? Sure, you give him the help action. Roll with advantage. Roll, roll, roll. Then the electronic die roller doesn't show you the number. It's a gray square. And go, well, I'm looking around. The game master's like, looks at the die roll. You don't find the book. Players are like, all right, we're going to leave, and instead we're just going to have to go out to the streets. After they discovered that they don't find it, then you reveal the die roll, and it's like, you rolled a 2 and a 3. Even with your bonuses, the highest you rolled was a 7, that kind of thing, right? Red Dice Diary says, it's a good point. I'm generally a fan of rolling dice in the open, but I can certainly see in these circumstances why keeping the result secret could work for a game. Yeah, it's just, and I like the idea of things being fuzzy, being the unreliableness of the dice, or the unreliableness of your perception of the die roll itself, right? Hey, I'm convinced I'm right, but my die roll had a failure, or I'm convinced I'm wrong, but my die roll succeeded, right? I go to the guard, I want to get into the city. The guard says, hell no, I'm not letting you in. I'm pissed because I failed, but somebody else in the crowd goes, psst, I heard you wanted to get in the city. And best friend of mine suggested that the guards, they can't let you in, but he suggested I can get you into the back door, right? That might be the success that you were looking for, despite the fact that you didn't convince the guard, because the guard's like, there's all eyes on me. There's no way, even though I want to let you in, there's no way I'm going to let you in. But if you step to the left, listen, you need to wait off to the side, so you might have success where you think you've had failure, right? That's also a possibility as well. Lurker says, I had a friend who gave bonuses for role playing and description. I believe it was like a 1 to 6 bonus. It added to a die 6 roll. We often don't. I know inspiration is in 5th edition, but I know a lot of, including myself, where we forget about that. But much like fate and fate points or hero points or things, yeah, role playing. Like maybe you just give I've heard it called boons and banes, where the boon is you get an extra die 6, the bane is you get a negative die 6 roll, where you engage in an action, and because of your role playing, because you are interacting with the world, you are more likely to succeed because you are embracing the concept of being in the world, right? You're not just going ham, hard as a mofo on the city guard because the guard said you can't get in. Instead, the guard says, you go to convince the guard says, hell no. But the game master gives you an extra bonus of a die 6 to get into the city, because essentially what you want to do is get in the city, right? It has nothing to do with convincing the guard. The guard you're just thinking the guard's in your way, but what ends up happening is someone in the shadows overhears you and gets you to sneak into the city through a back door, right? That's a success, even though it didn't happen the way you imagined it. And I think sometimes we forget that success and failure may not have anything to do with you. It might have to do with circumstances. I want to convince the king to send me on a mission. The king ignores you because a messenger comes up and says something in the king's ear, right? It's like, it doesn't really matter how good your charisma is. Maybe the king just was preoccupied, but one of the king's guards heard you, right? But anyway, guys, we've gone over the hour mark. I want to thank you. I know this particular episode was just like all over the place, and all over all over the world. But thank you very much anyway for being part of it. I love these discussions. I love these open things. Yeah, we're going to keep talking about unreliable narrators and point of view and info dumping later on in our RPG settings. Tomorrow's World Building Wednesday, so we're definitely going to build a world where, just rest assured that it's going to be a little bit odd. The unreliable narrator thing, the point of view thing is going to be part of it. So anyway, guys, just come on back and check it out. Like, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. So guys, have a great one. I will see you later. Thank you very much for watching. Here I am ultimately waiting for the graphics to come on in and